Hi everyone, welcome to today's Metaverse and Web 3.0 webinar. Very excited for you to join us today among the hundreds others that also have signed up to listen to our esteemed speakers this evening. I'm Alex, CS Manager from ADDX. And before we start the webinar proper, shall we just launch a quick poll so that we can understand the knowledge level of the audience today? While we're voting, let me quickly introduce our speakers. So first, on my right, we have Krishna, who's a veteran lawyer with deep blockchain experience, with over 250 blockchain-related deals under his belt. With his experience, he has started a crypto advisory called Digital Insights to help crypto businesses succeed. Samson is a self-made esports and gaming entrepreneur. His tagline is "Live with Passion." That has enabled him to lead and found global companies such as Gosu Gamers, Team Flash, DG Ventures, and many others, as he fulfills his mission to empower the next generation by offering them viable career options in esports and gaming industry, and most importantly, regardless of their background or academic abilities. Lastly, we have Ben. Ben is the crypto investment guru at mattdamian.com, aka crypto.com. He's the absolute genius. He lives and breathes crypto investors every day. For anything about crypto investment, he's the go-to guy to ask.
Alex is too kind, but thank you. Yeah.
Shall we have can we see the poll results? Well, it looks like we have a lot of beginners today. About 66% are beginners, and they're here to gain knowledge, which is, I think you guys are here to share a lot of what you guys have gathered over the couple of years and months you guys have been inside this industry. So I think we will have the Q&A portion at the end of this webinar. However, we have 3 different sections that we are going to run through a fireside chat. We have an overview of this industry, investing in the Metaverse and Web 3.0, and lastly, we'll wrap it up with the future of the Metaverse. So anytime you have a question, please pump it into the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If it's relevant to the conversation, we will just add it in. And one last thing before we kick off proper, I'm very excited to announce that we have an NFT giveaway from DigiPulse, which is Samsung's company that he founded, at the end of today's event. So seriously, stay tuned until the end of this webinar to get the giveaway details. It's really an exciting project. I can't wait to show you the video that we have prepared. Now, let us just quickly begin with a quick round of speaker introduction. Maybe we can just share what's your background, how do you come into the Metaverse Web3 space, and what really excites you in the space right now. Maybe we start with Krishna, just right now.
Thank you, Alex. And also thank you to ADDX for hosting. This is very topical, and I'm glad that this is part of the education that we're giving back. Well, 5 years ago, when the first few blockchain deals came my way, I was pretty much palming it off to the juniors, and realized soon enough, especially when one particular client told me to roll up my sleeves and do it myself, that I couldn't avoid it anymore. So I just went head on into it, and after about 3 months, really got got the bug and the enthusiasm. And so traditionally, I've been a corporate finance lawyer for the last 25 years, doing a lot of capital markets work, a lot of M&A, private equity work as well. And then the last 5 years, mostly on blockchain and blockchain-related transactions. It's been a very exciting space. Then finally, towards the end of last year, I said, why not, set up my own digital advisory firm as well. I still have a role in the law firm as an advisor, senior advisor, but really getting to the roots and helping companies and founders and entrepreneurs and enterprises really look at how they can get a digital layer over their businesses, and to the extent that it relates to blockchain and the Metaverse, as we speak about, to advise them on that as well.
That really sounds like a natural progression, a natural next step for you to come into this space.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, it's really been an exciting space, and having the legal and regulatory background does help, at least in navigating the path ahead, especially for clients who really want to know if what they value the most is their bandwidth. It's not so much the resources that they put into it, but to make sure that they are treading the right path going forward. So really excited to be here in this space.
Actually, I believe there's some lawyers actually that registered.
Oh, really?
For this
Okay,
event.
good.
So maybe they're here to listen to you.
No.
Maybe Samson, how about you?
For me, for me, I still remember in about 2015 and 2016, I went back to my sister's house. I saw all my nephews were playing games together with my brother-in-law. Back then was 48 years old. I asked my sister, my brother-in-law playing games with the nephew all the time. And you look at the TV never switched on. From then on, I really saw the patterns, right? And then from then on, I asked myself, there must be something in this media or this space. Of course, I started playing games during 80s when it's still black and white. Those were the days I called it Metaverse, but Metaverse is just 1992. People start talking about it because of Facebook. But before that, it's just games, right? We were really immersed into it. From then on, I saw there's a gap of people who love to create contents, people who love to play games. Where do they go, right? People talk about education. So I decided, when I have gamers that came to me, can you help me? I want to make money from playing games. We saw a lot of great gamers. From then on, we started a lot of companies. Whether you're playing games, whether you're building games, anything to do with games, whether it's a game in the media industry, anything to do with games, the whole ecosystem, we decided to just build and build and build. Now, we really in different pillars of the esports and gaming. So what it means is a community and the content creation, right? So when it comes to Metaverse and Web3, there's a lot to talk about. I think from now on, and then we decided to move to Web3. Recently, we started a Digi Ventures. So basically, we are game studios across Southeast Asia. We have a lot of developers creating games. And I think we can talk more about it later as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wish I could introduce you to my mom maybe 10 years ago when I was a hardcore gamer.
You'd be surprised how many parents came to me, Samson. How do we make money playing games? That questions from day one. And now parents came to me recently. Can I get my son to be part of your team? You see the whole thing just shifted. It's amazing.
Mom, if you're watching, please.
Mom, please talk to me.
Ben, how about you?
Yeah, Samson, great intro, and thanks Alex for having me and for Alex for having me today. So my name is Ben. I'm currently working for Crypto.com's strategic investment arm that has $500 million to invest in the most promising Web3 companies out there. Previously, I was an investment banking analyst at one of the major US banks. Essentially, in that role, I think we acted as brokers between investors like VCs as well as like Web2 companies, right? So for me, I made the conscious choice to basically transit towards the VC path because I felt that some of the skills that I learned back in the bank were very transferable, right? So I ended up here at Crypto.com Capital, which is like our fund, right? I think for me, I think that the space is growing incredibly quickly, explosive, right? As Krishna has mentioned a bit earlier. So it's an area that's growing so quickly to the extent that you are seeing like a Web3 boom as we had seen a Web2 boom post 08, right? So new verticals are coming up in the Web3 space, and I think it's a very exciting time to be in the space if you want to grow very quickly and supercharge your own growth.
Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I think let us just dive into the first section, which is really an overview of this new industry. Maybe Samson, you can start to share what are some of the problems that Metaverse as Web 3.0 solve.
I think it goes back to my desire of wanting to build a Web3 company, or Metaverse company, or Web3. I think at the end of the day, if you look at currently, it's actually Web2. Web2 basically you're talking about read and write, right? And a lot of the data that we have, whatever that we do is actually being captured, whether you're aware or not, right? Everything is being captured by the big guys. When I say the big guys, the so-called Facebook,
You're the product,
the Google. And at the end of the day, the data doesn't belong to you.
Yeah.
Right. And then me coming from a space of community, we built such a large community because of our esports team. And all these content creators, they are all being controlled by the big guys, right? So the reality is Web3 enables you to have that relationship with the community. I think to me, that privacy and that relationship with the community and that shared economy, to me, that is extremely important. Now, content creators, whether you are educated or not educated, if you are great content creators, you can sustain yourself. I think that is key for me. And now the economy is spread among all the different stakeholders, which I felt is really empowering. It's truly empowering the next generation of content creators.
How about in the gaming sense of things? You're talking about how people can now make money from gaming. Is it, let's say, side income, or people can really go full time into gaming? Right now, we see like competitions giving $2 million, $10 million prize pools.
Yeah. So the difference is that now there's something called, for example, if you love to play games, right? You're not content creator, but you are some form of entertaining or playing games. There's something called play to earn. Everyone talks about play to earn or play to win. So this is where you become part of the DAO or a guild, right? That you can start to play games and make a bit of money. So on the other hand, if you are content creators now, you love to build games, there are many ways now where you can create assets. Back then, when you run a company, you only have equity. Now you have something called NFTs, you have something called token. So suddenly now, anyone that can create contents, you can come out with assets. And that's assets can help you to make money. Of course, you need to be good. You cannot just simply create stuff and hope that people will buy. It's not that. But now it really opens up, because now it's all about ensuring that your relation, as long as you have that community, as long as you have people who want your stuff, now you can make money from that. So because of that, there are a lot of jobs that are being created now. Last time back then, where is such thing where we hire community managers? Now community managers is such a highly sought after jobs that everyone is looking for. There are a lot of jobs being created because of Web3 or because of Metaverse. And yeah.
Is it especially because of the mindset shift to be more privacy focused? Like for me, I see like a Metaverse or Web3 or crypto, as in nobody knows who you are, right? You can be a lizard image and your name is maybe just a couple of digits. So there's no prejudice, there's no racism, there's no like, oh, I don't like you because of your skin color. It's just who you are and the value that you have contributed to the community. I think do you think that's something that Web3 is exciting about Web3, but in the same time, there could be a lot of issues like censorship or people spreading fake news in a sense?
Of course, later I'm sure Krishna will share about stuff on the legality side. But for me, Web3 is inclusive. When you are playing games, when you are in the metaverse, nobody cares what skin color you are. Whether you're disabled, or as long as you can create great contents, you are great. No longer a lot of things, so it's really inclusive. I think that word is extremely important. That mindset of being inclusive in the Web3 can do a lot of wonders, right? So now we can even hire people from all over the place. It doesn't have to be everyone in the office as well. Because at the end of the day, you can create contents, you are up for the job.
Okay, yeah. Ben, what is currently happening on the ground that really excites you? Because every day you see so many deals that are happening, things that are developing. It's like if you miss the news for 3 days, you're out of touch with the crypto space. So what is something that's...
So I think up until now, some of the play-to-earn games that we've seen in the market have been more targeted at allowing people to earn supplement their income, right? So they have like a job, and then at night they can play to kind of like earn tokens and supplement their income. So it's traditionally been more targeted at emerging markets, right? And as a result of that, some of the play-to-earn games that we see in the market are not super geared towards being fun, right? I think what is exciting these days is as we see, the market cycle coming to maturity, right? We are seeing more AAA games wanting to come into the space and build on Web3, right? So, for instance, Ubisoft, Blizzard, right? They develop titles like World of Warcraft. They're actively looking into blockchain gaming as well. So that's one of the first trends that we observe. Secondly, I think we also see like, if you think about the target user of Web3 and crypto right now, these are people between the ages of like 20 to 35, right? So they grew up in the 2000s and they grew up in the 90s, right? So we are accustomed to certain kinds of games like RuneScape, Habbo Hotel, World of Warcraft, right? So I think some of the games that we're seeing also try to appeal to the sense of nostalgia that we used to have when we were kids, right? Growing up. Some of the games I look at, like, they have very simple games that are very pixel-based, right? Social metaverses, but it does remind you of like Habbo Hotel, which I used to have a good time on. And also one last trend that I'm also particularly interested in exploring and thinking about is this belief that, as we move towards a multi-chain world where multiple chains can coexist, for instance, Solana, Avalanche, Chronos, right? Like how do games move towards being multi-chain? So an instance of what I've seen is like, imagine like a space-based metaverse where there are different planets. A single planet could represent, let's say, Chronos, right? And as you transit from portal to the next planet, right, you know, a pop-up could come up asking you to change your network to like Chronos, for example, and then you enter into the next planet. So those are some things that we're seeing in the current market now in terms of like GameFi, Metaverse kind of themes.
Just to add to that, what Ben just mentioned, basically is community, right? Community now, you can actually cross-pollinate.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's no longer a game, no longer about, I just want to watch a movie. At the end of the day, it's all entertainment. And at the end of the day, it's going to be a transmedia. All media become one big social media. That's how I see it. So, yeah.
That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. We have a question from Amana. He said, can you give the audience a simple definition with an example of Web3 and the Metaverse? I think some of the audience might be a bit confused. What's the clear difference between Web3 and the Metaverse? Maybe we can just, maybe Krishna, you want to give
Sure.
What you think is the difference?
Actually, it has been confused quite a bit, and it's been used interchangeably as well. And so if you draw the distinction between the metaverse as being, if you like, a more recent display of the ability to digitally be on an application, that would essentially be the world of the metaverse. And then you look at Web 3.0, that phrase has been coined pretty much to signify the evolution of the internet, where that internet experience is also done on a decentralized basis. So as Samson mentioned earlier, when you have situations where you have, you know, a centralized player in the market, like a Facebook or a Twitter or an Instagram, the data that is churned out, even from your user experience, actually belongs to that centralized provider. Whereas for Web 3.0, essentially, and fundamental to this entire evolution is the fact that it's power back to the people. It's for you to have your own data sovereignty, to be able to control the content, so to speak, that results from it. So that's why you see a lot of blockchain projects these days looking to offer the ability for one to monetize the data that they actually create. So, you know, a lot has been said about it now being a creator economy. Sure, I think that will evolve, but I think history is also a very good indication of the social behavioral patterns of humans. And I think whilst the ability for 3.0 to enable someone to create, we do still like convenience. And so I think that's where we will have at some point the interlay between centralization and decentralization within Web 3.0. So I think to begin with, in theory, the decentralization and for you to control the data and the monetization of your own data is key. And at some point when we get mass adoption, I would see layers of centralization happening. So that is Web 3.0. And then the metaverse, I would say it's, you know, as Samson again said earlier that, you know, in Snow Crash, you know, the whole ability to be in mixed reality, virtual reality was a significant uptrend at that point. And so the metaverse is meant to capture, if you like, the digital fluidity of your existence from the real world, and if you like, the virtual world. Augmented reality and mixed reality is also going to be an important part of it, but you can look at it as the junction between real world and the virtual world, and I'm using that generically. So the metaverse is coming along, but I don't think if you are without a metaverse strategy that you'll be left behind. The Web 3.0 is certainly a technology that would enable communities to be formed, and communities to be formed within ecosystems. So depending on whether you're Nike or, you know, if you're a luxury goods a manufacturer, you may look at strategies to try and get the community together. And as Samson said, you the cross-pollination, I think is going to be a very effective policy as well for these companies.
There is a question from Daniel. You say, because now I think, let me paraphrase a bit. He's saying there's so many different projects, like now you see all the NFTs, they launch, the roadmap is the same. I'm going to do this, I'm going to give away, and then I'm going to launch a metaverse at the end. So there's so many different people building metaverse A, B, C, D, so many different kinds. How are they going to come together? Is there going to be one that dominates the entire thing? Or like what you say, is it like planet hopping in a sense?
So I think at the moment, you would still think about like traditional metrics, like how vibrant the community is when evaluating like some of these collections, right? So you would hop onto Twitter, hop onto Discord, and see if like the community is real. And what we've seen with NFT collections in the past is that they have been traditionally driven by community, right? So people actively have interest in the roadmap of the NFT collection, and then they buy that NFT, it pushes up the floor price, and it drives interest from there on, right? So I think typically most projects that we're seeing these days start off as NFT collections, and then like it does so well to the extent they think about metaverse next, right? So this is as opposed to if you had started off with a metaverse project first, and then you launch NFTs to supplement the gameplay. So I think this goes back to the point of like who are the teams building it, right? For example, like there are like studios out there in Singapore, for instance, right, that have like built games for many years. Samsung is a case in point here, that they've built like many games. They have like built engines that run like computation for like RNG, that kind of things, right? For them, it's easy to build like a start off the metaverse and go into like creating NFTs to supplement gameplay. But it's much harder for people that have skills to build NFT communities and then go into a metaverse after that. So I think the real question here is like, who's the team behind it, and can they drive community and adoption and to execute the vision that they have?
And I would also add, Ben, that's great, because I see that the evolution also happening where you have communities that are developing around what actually would be an underlying blockchain digital currency that has been that supports that blockchain. Because on Web 3.0, you get to see that the blockchain now gets center stage, and when people ask about the relevancy of Web 3.0 and the fact that it should be decentralized, then you wonder how Meta, Facebook actually plays into this. I mean, you could argue that Meta in itself, as just one ecosystem, is centralized, but there could well be pockets within that which is decentralized, because I still remember when Winklevoss brothers had, just immediately after Mark Zuckerberg had announced it, they went on to announce a massive decentralized metaverse fund, right? So that's I think that whole tokenization is going to be important around the community. I mean, certainly the projects that I'm seeing these days are highly nuanced. There's one project, Actuality, which they are looking at, even weaving in the ESG element into their social token.
Yeah.
Because I think the social token doesn't scream out utility, doesn't scream out earning or dividends, but really it centers around the ethos and the philosophy of that community. And then, because when the dust does settle eventually, it's the community and what's remaining of the community that will dictate how much growth and legs that particular project would have.
I think our conversation is steering naturally to the next section, which is investing in the metaverse. There are quite a number of questions are coming based on that. I think maybe we can start with Ben first. This industry is completely different from the traditional industry, on the way you evaluate perhaps maybe real estate. So how does our audience is very curious to know, how does one navigate this space? What matrix do you look for? I know one we always say is community, number of followers on maybe your Twitter, number of interactions on your Discord. What are some of these matrices you see?
I think fundamentally there are some similarities between investing in Web 2 and Web 3. You would still think about things like product market fit. You think about the leadership team, can they execute, as I had kind of like alluded to a bit earlier. You would think about, competitive landscape, who are they competing against? Can they, win in a very competitive market, for instance? So those are some of the fundamental points that you still think about, right? I think given the fact that, rounds in in Web3, you typically structure it as a token round rather than an equity round, right? I think there is an additional layer of analysis that you need to make here. For instance, what does the token do? What's the token use case, the utility? What's the vesting schedule of the token when you are like earlier stage rounds? Or like are other investors like locked for a certain period of time, and therefore at the unlock at the time that they unlock, are they going to sell? So those are some of the factors that you kind of consider. If they are like still in the VC round, you think about how they would come to market, i.e. like, the equivalent of an IPO, so like an IDO, how they IDO, what's their plan to do that and stuff like that, right? But kind of coming back to your earlier point, right, about community, as we had mentioned, right? I think we still need to think of like a lot of Web3 dApps as still being like very consumer-focused applications. So to that extent, right, like community is quite important, right? So how I think about it, right, is I'll actually head to the project's Twitter, check out, how many followers, are the likes, the comments like organic, or are they like, they could buy likes, right, theoretically. You go into like Discord, you see like, is the community really vibrant? Are like people like volunteering to answer questions, like, without being paid because they love the community so much, that kind of thing. So I think, yeah, those are some of the things that I would typically look out for.
Just to add on to what Ben just said, right? Since I'm the builder of a Web3 company, I just share to you a few distinctions, right? The biggest distinction in a Web2, I don't need to face the community.
Yes.
Web3, we have to do AMA with the community. They really ask you questions. Also, some of the development that we have done so far, we get a lot of inputs from the community. They will tell you what they want. We even run activities like, okay, why do you design this? Do you design that? Then your design becomes, so in our game development phase, we actually get them involved. That's the beauty of Web3. Because now you have a relationship with the community. Back then, maybe we talk to the publishers. Publishers give you a report, Manan says that this game is doing well, this game is not doing well. But this is different now. You have a relationship with them, good and bad. If you don't perform, if they don't like you, they will tell you. And you will hear that directly in your Discord, in Telegrams, they will tell you directly, okay? So at the end of the day, it's really about that transparency, so-called, between your team and that community. So if you want to invest in something, just go to the Discord, look at the relationship between the team and the community. You can see a lot of things from there. And you can tell actually from that.
I think it's very important, especially in Web3, the crypto world, that we build things people want. And it's very important to always engage the community. I think just to highlight, I think recently Crypto.com, they reduced the staking on the cards. And within 24 hours, there was such a big backlash that they immediately brought it back.
Yeah, I don't want to comment on that during this webinar, but we can chat about that offline.
Sure, man. I would say that one thing to observe from a very big player like Crypto.com, and the fact that they have a dedicated fund to invest into Web 3.0 and Metaverse related projects, pretty much signals the intent for the early entrants and the really big boys to support the grassroots and to actually, it's to an extent obviously self-serving, but to actually develop and give support to these projects, which eventually would form the basis of the whole community, whether it's from a crypto trading standpoint or whether it's just from an engagement standpoint. So I think that's very laudable for such big players to support the growth, because this is a very nascent industry, and it's hard to convince the old world, or the 96%, as I call them. I was part of it, because for them it's the traditional oval valuation matrix that they use. And in fact, for quite a few of the projects I work on, we kind of do a parallel track. One is if you have a token strategy, which is fundraising in a sense, please be connected to the reality, which is at some point you need to make sure that you have a defensible business model, which matches up to the valuation matrix that the whole world still recognizes, and frankly the whole world still controls the levers of commerce and economy. So having a very fluid strategy is always going to be key to the game. And as you say, having a pulse on the button of the people on the ground and the users is also going to be key. And I think, frankly, Samson, you're on the right path because, the way I look at the metaverse developing, it's really going to be about fun and games and about how the gamers are going to have their revenge in the creation of this ecosystem, which is all on their terms. So so that's going to be quite critical for how you and your team move forward on this.
I think there's a question for Kevin. He asked, how does somebody like you estimate a fair value for a token for L1, DeFi, or GameFi?
Right. I think you would still be able to use like some traditional metrics, right? For instance, like for games, right? You can go onto that radar and look at things like MAU, DAU. So these are very Web2 kind of metrics, right? I think for DeFi, like a simple one is just TVL.
Sorry, but maybe we can, right? We don't see the
total value locked, TVL, right? So it represents the number of people like LPing or like staking, liquidity mining on the protocol and providing liquidity to the platform, right? So those are some traditional metrics that you would kind of think about. So like another simple like way to think about things, right? For instance, you could like comp different like tokens together. For instance, like Sandbox Sand and like Decentraland Mana, right? So these are like two tokens that are represent metaverse themes, right? So if you can think of things like, you can make an assumption, okay, Decentraland is trading at 3.3 and Sandbox trading at 6.4 billion FDB today. Fully diluted valuation is FDB. So like you can make an assumption, for instance, like, okay, I'm quite bullish on Decentraland. Therefore, I think that there's a possible 2x here, if assuming that Decentraland takes over Sandbox. So that's a simple way to think about things like potential upside. But I think when it comes to valuing things, right? I think if you use a very like Web2 kind of approach, like DCF, it's not going to work in Web3, right? So it requires you to basically be able to bridge between like, an old school kind of mindset as to like, future value of cash flow, right? Into like a more Web3 type of thinking.
That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that, Ben. I think there's a question for maybe Samson. People are asking, besides gaming, is there any other thing a person can do in the metaverse? What's the other uses?
I think gaming is a term, I've called it the engagement platform. I was just talking to a Web3 bank. They were saying, how can I have those services as part of the game? Right? At the end of the day, it's not a game. The game is a layer where people uses it to engage with the community so that you have certain stickiness, right? That's about it. But there are so many things that we can do with it. You can see Nike, you can see Adidas, recently Adidas with the BAYC. They are all now is crossing, right? Where now you can even see when you go to Sandbox, I was just playing with Decentraland and all these so-called metaverse. It's that basically you are in this world now, you can do all kinds of e-commerce there, right? So it's really about now, not just about games. You can put fashion stuff inside as well. If you own a fashion brand, maybe you might want to start thinking, how do you communicate with the next generation, people who grew up in this world called metaverse, to start to communicate with them? Because one of the biggest challenge for brands right now is to communicate to the next generation. People say that, how can I get, so back then people was all jumping into esports because they felt the user engagement of esports, they're all the young people, the 18 years old, the 16 years old, the 20 years old. Now everyone talks about metaverse, because when you talk about metaverse, everyone plays game. Everyone live in that space. They spend more time in front of a PC playing games than outside. So basically, that becomes a culture. So when that becomes a culture, you want to be part of that culture. So if you're a brand of a product, or you are providing services, you might want to start thinking of an NFT strategy or a Web3 strategy, or how you can be a part of the culture so that you are able to go to the level and speak to the next generation, right? And once you do that, suddenly it opens you up to a different proposition. Just like Justin Bieber recently, right? I had a concert. I was watching that. I was like, holy crap, we are watching concert in the metaverse. And Justin Bieber having all these things stuck on his body. He was dancing and singing in the studio. And then you can see that is being replicated in the metaverse, and he started singing. And because of that, now location doesn't matter anymore. Suddenly I can attract people from Alaska, people from different countries. Not everyone can watch. Now your target market no longer about Malaysia, Singapore, who cares? As long as you love Justin Bieber, now everyone can watch. And then AC Milan recently showed their football match in a metaverse, and that's just amazing. It's limitless. So we need another hour for this.
Actually, but that's a very good point that Samson raised. You know, and I think by the end of this year with the World Cup, you're going to have a few platforms that are going to incorporate, you know, live games into a social setting, which is really a bunch of us all getting together, and it could truly be, you know, a bunch of us from different continents as well. And you know, like concerts from Justin Bieber, or even previously with Fortnite's collaboration with I forget his name now, but you know, that was about a year and a half ago. It already shows that even the YouTubers need to use this platform to connect with their users. And you know, when I look at the strategy, the token strategies for companies which which launched tokens to raise monies from like 4 or 5 years ago, it's it's more nuanced now because, you know, in theory, if you just look at Decentraland and Decentraland's use of mana, which is an engagement currency, if you like, within the ecosystem, but the moment it is listed as well, it brings in a layer of complexity and complication, because, you know, you have two different bunch of stakeholders, if you like, the ones within the ecosystem, and then the ones who are just merely trading and speculating, who have got different sets of pressure points, if you like, on that token. So I believe that we will soon see the way forward of multiple token strategies, even at the first launch. I mean, that's something I'm propagating as well, because to actually have it all merged together, you could have gotten away with it maybe 3 or 4 years ago, but now when you have these competing stakeholders, it actually might lead to, in the longer term, a disservice to the ecosystem that you're building out. And so I think like the use of social tokens, you know, it captures the culture and the subculture within an ecosystem. And also, I mean, I call it like the brand token behind it, because you're not looking to promise any particular utility, but you're looking to promise the stickiness within a community of users for the long term.
I think one of the things that when we speak to our investors of ADDX, speak to the public, one of the key concerns is like hacks, scams. Those are really on their mind. They feel like they invest in a certain project, it gets rug pulled for lack of a better word. It's just people taking your money and running away. So these are kind of key concerns when people look into the crypto space, even though it seems very attractive, it seems very futuristic, where everybody is rushing into it. But how can one sort of protect themselves from this kind of bad experiences?
I think it's shall I?
Yeah,
I mean, you know, it's the usual caveat emptor, right? And user beware, because the reality is, I think most people who have ventured into these assets and have been burnt, unfortunately, have done it either at the back of a fear of missing out, and then being propelled to very quickly invest, so to speak, or, you know, they've heard it from a friend or someone else. I mean, the fact that we are still in basement 2, we haven't even reached ground zero, means that, you know, everyone who's listening into this webinar are already ahead of the game. And I would say, you know, it requires really a concerted effort to understand the basics, you know, be very familiar with your wallets, and be familiar with some of the scams that are going on. So it's more about education, which is critical for one to amass now, and then be prepared for an investment strategy when it's further down the road. Because I don't think they're going to be missing out on any massive 200x type of project now, because the dust is going to settle. It'll take at least about 18 months before that settles, and then you'll be well prepared for an investment strategy at that point.
How about yourself, Ben? How do you, you see so many projects, how do you avoid? What's the like key red flag? Like, oh, this is a total no-go.
I think from a private markets perspective, like you would think about like who the team is, right? Are they like anonymous? Is there a reason why they want to be anonymous? Could it be because they don't really see longevity in the project and they don't want to, soil their own like personal reputation, right? Or could it be because have full-time jobs and they don't want to transit until they make the project launch, right? I think we've seen a lot of there's other things like, for example, like doing your research as to like who the project is, whether the project is like legitimate or not, stuff like that, right? Like we've seen like a number of scams, like for example on Uniswap, right? It's permissionless. Anyone can create a token, just create some liquidity on there, and like as a result of like people certain projects being very popular at the moment, right? Like GMT, GST, which is StepPen, right? It's a move to earn project. Like I've heard of people talking about creating like fake tokens and creating pools on Uniswap, right? To basically like make people buy a wrong token, right? And then they just like dump the token after that. So like I think yeah. So okay, so those are some specific examples, but like I think
don't scare the audience.
I would say that generally, if you are someone with not so much experience, right, a good bet is to basically buy tokens on centralized exchanges because they have a very stringent listing requirement, right? And they generally filter out scams for you. So they don't allow scams to be listed, right? So anything you buy there, of course, is there's price action risk, right, whereby tokens just decrease, but generally they're not scams, right? So you still need to do your research as to understand, what are things like token utility, vesting, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think there's maybe a similarity maybe between crypto.com and ADDX in terms of we have strict listing process. It's like because we are both actually marketplaces or exchanges, right? So we're only as good as the things that we have on the platform. And if people get scammed, this is a lousy platform, and people will just run away to safety.
Sure. Due diligence process is super important. Making sure that you don't list tokens when they're all-time highs to the extent that when they buy at the top, they're just gonna start going below par, right, when they purchase. So I think those are some of the important things that centralized exchanges look out for.
Could you share a bit maybe on what's your own personal maybe due diligence process?
Right. So some of the things that I look at are things like fundamentals, as I mentioned before, right? Product market fit, competitive landscape, who the team is, things like token utility, how active the community is and stuff like that, as well as I think those are some of the ones that I try and look at.
I must say that it's great that ADDX has done this NFT giveaway, because it's a clever way of signifying your adeptness, if you like, with the market understanding, and also your willingness to have an engagement strategy. And surely you would have put in a lot of thought to the NFT. And so
actually this NFT is actually by DigiPulse.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, they just actually offered the opportunity for us to give to our viewers, because we really want to because we have a lot of beginners. I think majority of them might heard of NFT because the word of the year last year, but might not have owned one. So I think DigiPulse wanted to do something to give it back to the community. And since we're doing this webinar, like, hey, why not we just give it to the people that have attended
and then I guess in that case, it stands for you now to create your own NFT and link to special private exclusive access to these seminars or something else. But it can be a very clever strategy for the traditional enterprises to start showing its relevancy to to the community at large.
They actually might be already doing that. I don't know. You can ask Alex.
What?
Nothing.
Okay, let's move to the last section. I think it looks like some questions coming in, people asking, what's the outlook? Right now we're here, we just went past a super nice bull run. It sort of crashed a bit, and it's like choppy waters. What is the outlook maybe in the next couple of months? We know in the long term, we believe that crypto is here to stay. But what do you guys see maybe in the next few months?
I'll start it. Well, I think it's a very unique time, because I think you're slowly seeing signs of if you like, a decoupling between the traditional markets and if you like, the heavyweight Bitcoin. Because the moment you see that, then you'll see that there's a different set of metrics that the investing public looks at vis-a-vis Bitcoin, as well as the S&P 500. So as just one market indicator, I think that we are more going to be affected by the global macro economic situation as opposed to anything crypto specific, because I think it's been done to death. Announcements on regulations and announcements of hacks and all of that, particularly in 2021. And the robustness of the crypto market then already signifies that pretty immune to those types of announcements. So I would think the next couple of months, in my opinion, is kind of still a continued sideways movement. And if not, if that decoupling does happen, then you'll have a run on the majors. So it's a quiet period in that sense.
How about your views, Samson?
For me, I want to see some from a different perspective since I'm a builder, right? And there are a few things here. I felt it's going to shift because a lot of the mainstream companies are moving into this part. Like it or not, when they start to move to this part, people are more and more educated, right? Whether the scams happen or not, whether sideways, all these things happen, whether it's stocks, all assets have their up and down. But coming from a builder perspective, we continue to do the stuff, right? The biggest challenge I see is every company are bringing a lot of money, billions of dollars, right? You just talk to the VCs, some VCs have 750 million, some VCs have 800 million. This is just one or two. When you add it up together, billions and billions of dollars. But the reality is not enough of talents to build the infrastructure, to build all these so-called technologies. So difficult to hire people. So I see the trend moving is education. Why I'm so supportive of this seminar, because I felt coming from all of us who are building, especially myself, we need to continue to share our knowledge because we need to educate the people. The more we educate the community or the masses, the more people will make the right decisions, right? And the more parents will say that now I can send my son to study Web3, right? If it's not enough of talents, I can give you $1 billion, you will never build stuff. At the end of the day, behind a business, people. Behind the people is schools and education. And that's why I want to applaud you guys for pushing this. I think we should do more. And I really believe whether sideways or not sideways, Web3 is just an enabler. It's not a content. Remember that. If it's an enabler, it's just a plate that holds the food. Right? So we need to make sure that we continue to build, continue to have the education, so-called the agenda of the education to educate the masses so that they learn more about. So transparency comes at a cost. If you don't participate and get to know the team who build building and stuff, you invest blindly, follow your friends or friends says, hey, let's go and buy this token, then you need to take responsibility. Take responsibility to educate yourself. I think that is extremely important.
Yeah, so for me, I kind of echo the views of both Krishna and Samson, right? So in terms of like macro, right, what we're seeing is like markets kind of moving sideways or even downtrending, right, as a result of very high rates of inflation. So the Fed naturally needs to kind of like react to that in terms of like looking at rates, right, tapering and stuff. So I think that's the outlook for the next 6 to 12 months. At the same time, given that markets are trading in this particular manner, right, like I think founders these days do not really focus so much on the short term. So they, rather than thinking about where the token price is going to be tomorrow or even the day after, right, they focus on building what they do, right. Hopefully, as we come towards the next market cycle, then they can enjoy the fruits of the labor, right, as they focus on building. I think the next thing that I also wanted to kind of point out is that we should be at this current point in time be thinking about like more infrastructure type plays right now, right? Because end of the day, regardless of a bull or bear cycle, typically all of it still accrues back to the infrastructure level, right? So L1 tokens are the simplest kind of bet that you can think about, right? Of course, right now they're still trading sideways, but it's a good time to accumulate at this current price level. Not investment advice, but yeah, that's my view. Yeah.
An extra point in case would be during the last crypto winter, you just said Solana and Polygon just in hibernation, right? And then when it reopened for business, so to speak, they just shot through. So I think that's a very good point.
I think let's answer one last question. I think this is a repeated question. A couple of people are asking based on you're saying lack of talent. There's a lot of people that want to learn more.
They want a
They're
job.
asking
and
where can
DG
a
studios.
developer or creator gain more knowledge in the metaverse or Web3. There are a lot of information online, but where do you suggest this beginner can start?
I think there are many ways. I started learning this by talking to people, right? There are so many AMAs that you can go to, you can ask them questions. And the leaders, this is when, okay, let's talk about games since I come from that angle. You will not have a chance to talk to the EA or the Riot CEO, but you have a chance to talk to Web3 companies, talk to them. And nowadays, when all the Web3 companies, they started hiring, they don't even look at your results. They don't look at your results. If you're good enough, you're good enough, right? It's all about what can you create. And a lot of times when we hire based on passion. And now, passion no longer a hobby. You can make money. So if you have a gift, if you can create content, there will be tons of companies looking for you. Seriously, tons of companies. Never once you can ask. I have about 250 people in our group. We hire so many people, and we even support the community. But never once we ask them, what's your results? We don't talk about that. We look at what can you do. So as long as you can create stuff, you have a chance, right? Go and talk to the people, talk to the builders, right? You can even link me in, and then I can give you advice. If you're in Singapore, you can drop by to the studio. I can show you around. I'm more than happy to do that. We do that to the youth all the time. We work with the Ministry of Culture and Youth, and we share to hundreds of youth coming to us. Where can we have alternative path? This is alternative path, but it's no longer alternative. Now it's going to be mainstream eventually. Next time people will look for community managers.
Yes.
You will look for marketing that is all Web3. Right?
Yes.
No longer we will talk about how to become this. So there will be a hybrid of path. I hope I answered that questions.
Yeah. So I think it's more about chasing your passion, speaking to people, meeting more Web3 founders. I think Samson is really very nice. I think you reach out him maybe on LinkedIn, was your preferred? Is it LinkedIn or
Yeah,
Twitter?
LinkedIn. You can link me in LinkedIn. If you want to talk to me, you can message me, right?
Or you can drop just me an email. I'm happy to connect you with any of our speakers.
No problem.
We'll continue the conversation. I think we're sort of coming to the end of the fireside chat / Q&A. I think before we go into the very exciting giveaway, I want to launch just a second poll just to understand whether you guys enjoyed this webinar, whether it was insightful, and most importantly, what you want to hear from us next. So really a big thank you to the DigiPal team, to Krishna, to Ben for coming down today. After this poll, we'll show you what is the NFT that Samson is creating with his team. So really exciting NFT game project. It's like a squad battle, PvP, and competitive. Basically, one NFT, you can play multiple games, such as Stage Defense, Clan System. I saw there's one that looks like Gunbound. I think whether you guys are old enough to know what Gunbound is.
You know your age now.
I was an avid gamer. I think, yes, I think maybe we can play the video to showcase what is DigiPulse. this is the QR code for you to scan to enter the giveaway. We'll also be sending the link right now in the chat for you to enter. Basically, this NFT is really given to the people that have attended and watched and listened to us for the last hour by DigiPulse. Really, thank you very much for organizing this.
Thank you for having us as well.
It was quite a last minute thing, but we put it through. I think. I hope you guys really enjoy this NFT. It's totally free. It's really for you to enjoy and to start envision, especially those that haven't owned an NFT, don't know what is an NFT game. This is really a great opportunity for you to go and try it out, to hopefully you win the 15 eggs that we sort of are offering an NFT. So maybe I just give a color of what these Digi eggs are. Basically, these Digi eggs will evolve into a virtual pet, and there's different tiers to this pet that you can get. I believe the ultra rare one is really has a big amount of monetary value. So I hope whoever gets that will be pretty happy. So after these eggs sort of hatches, you can enter the ecosystem and play the games that DigiPulse has created, and the games that you have seen in the video that we just shared. So really, thank you very much to our speakers for today. We will leave the QR code here for you to scan, as well as leave the Zoom on for those who need to click on the link. So you have to enter by tonight, or actually the end of tomorrow. We will announce the winners on LinkedIn on 6th of May on DigiPulse social media channels, and the winners, we will contact you via email. So stay tuned for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex.
Thank you.